Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media.
Welcome home to the native. Landing on a podcast space destined for greatness. 60 minutes or so hit, not too long for the grave shift. High level combo, politics in a way that you can taste it, then digest it. Politics touches you even if you don't touch it, so get invested. Cross the T's and dot the I's. Gillum back to get 'em. Stand on business with Rye. You could have been anywhere, but you chose us. Native Land Podcast, the brand that you can trust. Yes.
Do we want to live in a country of freedom, compassion, and rule of law, or a country of chaos, fear, and hate? And here's the beauty of this moment. We each have the power to answer that question. The power is with the people. We each have the power to answer that question. And in the next 105 days, then we have work to do. We have doors to knock on. We have phone calls to make. We have voters to register. And we have an election to win.
Welcome home, y'all. This is Native Land Pod. It is episode 29. It's flying by just like these days as we get closer and closer to the election. Frankly, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. And it is, of course, the story of our lives. Among us, there is equal parts celebration and grief. There are many who are so excited about Kamala Harris's ascension to the top of the ticket. And there are still so many among us who are grieving the loss and the tragic murder of Sonya Massey. And so today we'll talk about both of those things and everything in between. We welcome you home. We ask for just a brief moment of silence to honor Sonya Massey. So here we are. We are on the other side of Joe Biden stepping down from running for president. He decided that he would not be running this amidst having COVID, being quarantined in Delaware, and passing the torch to Kamala Harris, as he promised to do 4 years ago, to be clear. So I want to hear y'all weigh in on all the things. A lot can change in a week, man. We were just here talking about what we really felt about folks pushing Joe Biden, telling him that it was time to go. Andrew, you had some strong thoughts. I had some strong thoughts. Tiff was feeling torn both ways. Where do y'all stand now?
Well, what's up, sis? Because the ground has shifted. And Tiffany, you're looking great over there. Angela, looking great. It's good to be back with y'all, especially after last week where we let all of our thoughts come unfettered, unchecked. It was the real. And honestly, I know that we all work every week to try to make sure that we're bringing our full selves. But Angela, the conversation that Tiff helped facilitate for us really put us in everybody's living room, because it's the fight that everybody seems to be having with a close relative, a husband, a spouse, a child, a relative of any sort. And I will tell you this much, half my family with you and half of them with me. But at this point, every one of them is thrilled, excited that Kamala Harris is the VP choice. And I'm talking about people who used to be critics the day before, turned completely solidly behind her. It's been pretty crazy to watch.
I think it's crazy that we recorded this podcast and an assassination attempt on the former president of the United States was such a huge story, and by the weekend, by Sunday, that was now old news. Then you had this crazy shift in politics, which happens, as we all know, when Vice President Harris became the front runner and at the top of the ticket. And I have to say, I think, prior to that, I felt rather apathetic. We talked about that on the last episode. And something about seeing her take the helm. I've shared a stage with her before. Angela, I'm pretty sure you've shared a stage with her before. Andrew, you have a relationship with her. It's interesting how this happened. And I wonder, was there any other way a Black woman was going to be on the top of the ticket were it not for this confluence of tragedy and absolute desperation? And I'll take us back to 2008 when Obama became the nominee. Then, too, it was also an obscene level of angst and circumstance happening. Coming off the George W. Bush presidency, the country was in a rapid decline financially, and people were desperate. And it's like, well, let's just have a black guy try it. This time we're in the same position. So, a lot of people have been talking about, well, I wonder if she can win. And if I see one more poll, I'm going to pull my hair out and scream.
Oh, my God.
I think we have to prepare for the shifting demographics in this country and start voting with our conviction and not looking to see who might white folks support. Vote with your conviction. When we were in a group chat and somebody kept saying, oh, but will the public feel this? Will the public feel this way? And one of our good friends, Erin Haynes with the 19th, who does great work, she said, you are the public. And I think that's such an important reminder for the folks tuning in today. You are the public. And she will define herself in her own way, having been the vice president in this administration. This will be a time for her to distinguish herself and the differences between she and President Biden. So I do not feel as apathetic. I feel encouraged. I feel hopeful. I also feel nervous because as we, plow forward to November, I am reminded that a significant amount of these people have already decided that election results don't matter, that they just simply will not accept a result that they don't like. So I think this win has to be a decisive win for her. I want to know from you guys, I know we're all excited and hopeful, but what is the thing keeping you up at night as we barrel forward? Like, what are the things we are thinking about, whether they're rational or irrational, and, what are y'all most concerned about?
Go ahead, Angela.
Oh, I was deferring to you. Well, I want to stay on the hope for a minute because we got a whole episode to talk through all the angst and the worry and the stress and all of that.
Angela, before you go there,
okay.
Tiff asked the question in her comments. No. She asked the question and said, would we have imagined that the only way that a black woman would be set up to ascend into, the presidency is the way that it occurred? And Tiff, Gerald Ford anticipated that question for you, and he wanted you to hear this response.
Mr. Ford, what advice would you give a young lady wanting to become president of the United States?
Well, I hope we do have a young lady at some point become president of the United States. I can tell you how I think it will happen.
That's you, Tiff.
Because it won't happen in the normal course of events. Either the Republican or Democrat political party will nominate a man for president and a woman for vice president. And the woman and man will win. So you'll end up with a president, a male, and a vice president, a female. And in that term of office of the president will die.
That didn't happen.
And the woman will become president under the law or Constitution.
I wonder why we was playing this clip.
And once that barrier is broken, from then on, men better be careful because they'll have a hard time ever even getting a nomination in the future. But that's the way it's going to happen.
Wow.
I just thought it was so
That's amazing.
He killed the man in the clip. That's why I wasn't going to this. This
well,
clip
Joe
has
Biden, we
been,
know
clip
is
has
still
been
alive.
circulating all online everywhere. And I was like, now, why are we playing this where he did off this man? So anyway.
I hadn't seen it. That was my first time. I think that
okay.
was a great tee up.
I couldn't believe.
He was forecasting what would happen
Absolutely.
decades later, sans the
death,
killing of
which
President
is pretty
Biden.
significant.
Yeah.
His pretty significant.
But it's so crazy that at that time he could not conceive of a woman on her own outright running and receiving the nomination, that the way it would happen in America one day is a man and a woman would get together, the man will be president, the woman will be vice president, and she'll ascend through some crisis in the office.
Well, that's
when you
kind of
got
what happened.
a black woman, that's a whole other situation too.
Well,
That's
speaking
real.
of black women and my excitement, you guys know I have a uniform that I like to wear every week. And this week I'm slightly at a dress code, so I could just wear this.
Oh,
I love that.
I got my sweater.
Wait, can you take your jacket off? Because I didn't see the back.
Oh, that's the
That's
Delta.
her Howard photo.
That was the Howard,
I love
AKA
it. I love it. You know everybody's going to want to know how they can get that.
I don't know. You got to ask Jerry if he'll run that thing back from 2020. But in the meantime, this is Fear of God. I'm Fear of God all day today. I love it. But yes, I just got to tell you, I have delighted in the brief reprieve that we've had from some of the grief that we've experienced as a people, as a culture in this country right now, just to celebrate this moment. I was delighted that Joe Biden kept his commitment to Kamala Harris. I am delighted at like watching her shine. Like one of the things I think we said a lot on this podcast, and it pissed a lot of folks off initially, is that Kamala, when you're just one-on-one with her, is this incredible.
Vice President Harris.
Say it again.
I'm just calling her Vice President Harris because people always get very familiar. But I know you know her personally.
I'm literally about to tell a personal story. So if you just roll with me for a minute, even her campaign signs right now say Kamala. So I think I'm safe, and they know I deeply respect this woman and her role in her office and who she is as a person. What I was getting ready to say was when you're in those one-on-one moments with Kamala, the individual, she's very warm. She's very cool. She's very down to earth. And I'm so excited that people are going to get to see that side of her as well as the prosecutor side. So on that point, I really wanted to ask y'all, on the other side of her raising more than $100 million so far, for everybody was like, who said she couldn't do it. Small dollar donors stepped up and said, yes, she can. Right? Yeah. Folks came out. They said they're going to phone bank. My dad volunteered my mom to be a Kamala Harris volunteer. And Mama Rai was smiling instead of being like, man, you know, that apathy turned to astonishing excitement just overnight. And so I join you in that, Tiff. The question I have is one that Tiff and I were about to debate on a side chat a few days ago. And that is this. Should Kamala Harris debate Donald Trump? And if she should it be on Fox? Why or why not?
Tiff, it was your fight first.
I think absolutely. She's ready and willing, but I can almost guarantee another debate will not happen. Donald Trump does not want to square up with Vice President Harris on a stage. We all saw, President Biden was not ready for the moment. And so I think even in her speech, the first time we heard from her, after she ascended to the potential nominee, because the convention is not for a few weeks, but the potential Democratic nominee, she said, I am a prosecutor. I've prosecuted all types of people. And she went on to, describe these criminals that all are, would be applicable to former President Trump. So I think he would be incredibly intimidated by her. I think he lacks the maturity to stand across from her and wait his turn to speak. I think he lacks the intellectual engagement to be able to articulate any clear point. I think the conversation would shift from Joe Biden being older to Donald Trump being older, which it should have already been there, because he routinely made these incoherent statements even on that debate. But the media loves to, chase one headline over the other. I do not think it should be on Fox News. And this is why, Angela, I don't know what that would get her. You're not gaining any more voters. That is not a legitimate news organization. It is a propaganda network. They do not adhere to the rules. As you all know, I've appeared on Fox News when I very first started doing television. And they would do things like, hey, you're coming on to talk about this topic. And then they would switch it at the last minute. And somehow all the other guests knew that they were going to switch topics. And, would spring it on me. We're going to talk about North Korea. It was fine. I'd stay ready. So it was good. I was able to flow. But they do that kind of trickery. I just don't know what it gets her. I don't know why she would lend her face, her platform, her viewers to this network that traffics in misinformation, disinformation, racism, misogyny, xenophobia, etc. So I'm a strong no on appearing on Fox News and having anything to do with them that influences their bottom line.
Tiff, I would agree with you all the way probably up to that point, except for the fact I don't want them getting no proceeds and profits by any of us putting our eyes on the station to watch a debate. So that would be an objection. But if you're Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, I'm guessing the reason you would do it is because you are putting yourself in position to tear away voters who would otherwise never consider you. And now that they've been able to put you side by side with the guy they thought was, next to Christ, he's looking kind of whack. And,
not to them.
I'm telling you, I think she doesn't risk her base, and she potentially gains new ground.
But it legitimizes and normalizes a terrible, problematic platform that's literally been in cahoots with foreign agents, foreign governments. Like, at some point, like, you have to draw the line. Like, stop chasing people. What the gain would not be worth the risk, in my opinion.
What is it? The Washington correspondents, don't they get credentialed by others, quote unquote?
They do. I think the Washington Correspondents Association, yes, the White House Correspondents Association, they credential Fox News. But that is also something that's been up for debate and been subject
they have
to
those
debate.
Credentials. I only ask because they've got those credentials, which means they are by and large looked at as a fair, balanced, legitimate news source. And so long as that's going to be the case, I think we're just sort of really arguing amongst ourselves, and we're not the ones who need convincing. It's those listeners over there who already have a bar so low set for her. They don't have any expectation for this, quote, DEI vice president nominee for Democratic Party for president. They literally disregard her resume. This woman's got more experience than J.D. Vance has been in the Senate less than 2 years. This woman has, anyway, my point is they got no expectation for her performing at a functional level.
I think if you look at the demographics of the Fox News viewer, which I have for the first book I wrote, they are, I want to say maybe 94% white, incredibly, and don't quote me on that. The numbers could have changed, so forgive me because I can't cite my source in this moment.
Probably extreme.
The numbers could have changed, but they have since, because the conservative media is now so decentralized with other platforms like OAN and Newsmax and other outlets, they still continue to be the juggernaut. They still dominate the ratings. They still lap MSNBC, and everybody's lapping CNN, including us. So they do have a significant amount of viewership. My argument, though, Andrew, is I do not believe those people are convincible. And they can watch her on other platforms. I think there is a significant amount of danger in legitimizing that type of platform. And I don't believe that the viewers who overwhelmingly watch Fox are even receptive. I think they are willfully ignorant to policies and the things that are promoted on that network. I think that network allows them to traffic in racism. I think it allows them, it validates the feelings that they have about migrants, even if it's a completely scripted narrative from Fox News. So I would strongly discourage her. But Angela, you asked the question and you haven't answered, so I want to hear what you have to say.
So Tiff, this is where I disagree. I feel like she needs to go like the evangelist to the four corners of the earth to go find these votes. I am not saying, however, that she should have $hundreds of millions spend to go find Nikki Haley voters, but in the event that she could cop some of them, why not go on Fox? I think there are a lot of platforms she should go on, including Joe Rogan's and a bunch of other folks who maybe we don't listen to, but some folks who do and are persuadable can hear her there because they're not tuning into MS. They're not tuning into CNN. They're not watching some of the pods and listening to some of our friends who we know are brilliant and dope and writing great think pieces on Kamala. So I think if she don't have anything to lose, what in the hell does she have to lose? Nothing. Go get the votes, man.
Well, the next debate will put more eyes on her than will be on her prior to Election Day.
Yeah.
It will be the largest concentrated audience in the country between now and Election Day.
Yeah.
And second, the second point is I would disagree with you slightly, Angela, with regard to sort of saturate the conservative talking heads and whatever media platforms if you're Kamala Harris. And I think having attempted something similar in campaigning in all 67 counties of Florida and camping out in some of these really red areas is that we also serve as a bit of a reminder and organizer for the kind of vitriolic pushback that they would normally heap on us, on a regular day. But if they were thinking about not voting, my very presence and their space and their local television, market was enough to agitate them to show up on Election Day and make sure I would not become governor of Florida. And so I do think that there are some platforms that make some sense. a network hosting a debate that will get more global audience, larger than any other between now and election day? Yes.
I had something to say about that on the other side of this break, because I know we cut up against the break, but I got a response right after this break. So stay tuned on the other side. I got something to say.
Say it, man.
Before I was elected vice president, before I was elected United States Senator, I was elected Attorney General of the state of California, and I was a courtroom prosecutor before then. And in those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
Tiff, I want to hear what you got to say, but I also want to get into whether or not we think that's an effective line. But Tiff, go ahead.
But I'm going to answer your question, because I think that's right along the lines of what I have to say. Yes, I think that is an effective line to receptive people. I do not believe Fox News viewers would ever be persuaded by that. I think they would look at, who is this uppity you-know-what telling this white man that he's a criminal and she ought to be happy to be in this position. She ought to be grateful to be in this country. We've already heard the Senator J.D. Vance, the vice presidential nominee on the Republican side, say that he never hears her express gratitude for being in this country. I think we're expecting intellect from people who have none. They have no curiosity even about it. So I love that line. I do think, and we've talked about this a little bit in our group chat, I do think there are some people who, it will become a trope, that she was a prosecutor, because there are a significant amount of people in this country who don't necessarily understand the roles prosecutors play. And previously, they've only been painted as playing a horrible role and locking up black men. Statistically, that's not true about Vice President Harris when she was in San Francisco. San Francisco doesn't even have a significant number of black men who live there for her to be laser focused on black men. But you can look at the numbers and it's just not true. And also, as we've said on this show many times before, Marilyn Mosby, Kim Fox, prosecutors play a hugely important role in that they decide what charges to bring and what charges not to. So sometimes prosecutors are keeping black men out of jail. They decide when, speaking of Sonya Massey, they decide when a law enforcement officer shoots an unarmed black person, they're the ones pursuing those charges. So I think we have to inform and educate a receptive base. I do not think that's even possible on the Republican base. And if I can kick this question back to you, Angela, we talked about this. Like we were both disgusted at the Democratic Party going after these Nikki Haley voters. So I hear you saying like, no, I don't think they should spend hundreds of millions of dollars to do it. But I just wonder, why do you think Fox News might be a good platform versus, I like your idea about like Joe Rogan and other platforms, but why Fox News versus like any other network? Like, what is it about these folks that you have faith that maybe even 5 of them might be able to come over to her side? Because I have none.
Ratings?
What do you mean rating? No. Oh, so you're saying because more people would tune in and so they would then say, oh, I like her.
I think.
Like, what about those viewers that you think they would say, no, I have faith in the viewers, that they would hear from her and be open to her and say, yes, I will vote for her?
Well, I think with any election, you have to count on math. Like she can't win just with her base. There aren't enough people. She has to build a different coalition. I don't think it's the Obama coalition. And even Barack Obama went on Fox News. He went on Fox News. He was interviewed on Fox News. Like, I don't just think she should do a debate on Fox News. I think she should be interviewed there. She could pick her interviewer. But like, yeah, she absolutely needs to talk to people who are uncomfortable with her, who say Kamala instead of Kamala, people who, will want to demonize her. And just like Donald Trump was birther in chief under Barack Obama, will try to say that she's not a citizen. Like all of the things that they'll do to try to engage in xenophobic scare tactics to keep people from even being curious about her. So for that viewer, that person who could be persuaded, but they're not curious, as you said, maybe you have to bring the curiosity to their living room. So I don't have the answers. But what I can say is the math we have ain't going to take her across the finish line. And so where are we going?
Would you go on Fox As a like a community validator, would you go?
I would struggle with that. I think we've all talked about it, right? Like,
yeah.
I think for me, I think Kamala's more mature than me. I think you're more mature than me. Like, I'm looking to call somebody a bitch on Fox, right? Like, it's like it's gonna go down, right? It's just like take my earrings off, ready to swing, throw a shoe, can't fight, but maybe I would do that. I'm not sure.
Vaseline.
I don't trust my my inner salvation enough to go on Fox, but I think that if there were some parameters and I were people on her, part of her strategic advisors, I would set up some parameters and have her go on. And if they violate those things, don't do it again. But I cannot see a downside. Like, I remember, just as an example, and it's a little different, but ESPN's viewing audience isn't that different from Fox. I don't think people really understand that, especially when you get to like the Sports Center hour. Earlier in the day, it's more diverse. They've brought on some programming recently that's trended more conservative, more flyover country, and middle-aged white men. Sports Center was that time. I was pitching Kamala for Vice President Harris for a segment about Brittany Griner when we were still trying to get her back, and I thought it was perfect for her because so many people who are not us don't hear from her, don't know what she's been doing. And even though Brittany Griner wasn't yet a success story, I knew that we were teeing it up for when it became a success story. And they couldn't see it. So her team asked if she could instead talk about Roe. Can't talk about Roe on ESPN.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't work. We can talk.
What's wrong with her? Why would they suggest that? That don't make no sense.
You said what?
Well, this doesn't make any sense.
It wasn't none of the qualified people know, of course.
It doesn't
Clearly, going on ESPN to talk about Roe, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
Angela suggests it makes sense.
Yeah, I tried to make that point. I was like, hey, it's a sports network. It's probably got to be sports adjacent. But I thought it was a win for her, and they declined. They were too worried about her. But my point is, the Kamala Harris that is going to secure not just this nomination, but the presidency is a risk-taking Kamala Harris. And that means she's going to have to do some things that make all of us uncomfortable. We're like, why did she do that? I'm not sure about that. I think that's really important. And one of those places, y'all, might have to be in this VP pick. So if y'all don't mind, I love to get our polling firm in session and see where we think we are on a VP pick. What do y'all think about that?
Yeah, I want to talk about that because what you just said about her being a risk taker. One, I just want to quickly say, when you said that about ESPN, I didn't know that, but it makes all the sense because you think about who watches sports. You think about NFL, like America's sports. Of course, they would have a significant conservative viewing audience. So that makes sense, and it would make sense for her to appear on there even now. But in terms of VP, if she is to be a risk taker, we're having the same conversations we did with then candidate Obama, then Senator Obama, and why he chose President Joe Biden. Joe Biden was very strong on foreign policy. He had been in the Senate a long time. He was a safe Pennsylvania white man. We're doing it again this time. We know the VP position is a pretty much superfluous position. It has gotten a lot more attention, I think, when Sarah Palin was tapped because she was a historic candidate. And now with Vice President Harris making history as well. If she goes with like plain vanilla, let's say if she goes with Senator Mark Kelly, that Arizona's a swing state that, would garner her a significant amount of viewers. I think somebody like Bashir, the governor of Kentucky. Yes, Kentucky?
Yep.
Yes. Angela, you alluded to this as well. I don't know if that gets her a lot. Kentucky's a solid red state. Now, the question is, and I don't have an opinion on here, I'll be honest. If she were to go bold, we know Gretchen Whitmer has already said, Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan has already said that she does not wish to be her running mate. But is this the time to make a bold step like that? And a bold choice might be Governor Gretchen Whitmer. And I want y'all to know the Secretary Pete Buttigieg has a #1 fan on this podcast, and it's not me and Andrew. Angela loves Pete Buttigieg.
Not for VP.
No, you don't like him for VP. Really? Those would be two bold choices if she's going to be a risk taker.
I think if you don't like him,
who do you like?
I think I got another bold one. You messed up my poll, but I'm going to let you have it.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
You okay? We in flow. Andrew, do you have a bold pick, or do you have somebody who you think, like if you were a betting man?
Governor Shapiro.
That's who you think she's going to pick?
Pennsylvania.
I think that's who she should pick. I think I said this when we were in New York. I think you had interviewed him, a couple of hours earlier at Breakfast Club. And I think you were impressed. And when you came back, I said, I think that this guy has national, White House presidential sort of trajectory. And I felt that way because the night of his acceptance speech, when he was, beautifully elected in the state of Pennsylvania to its governorship, he was so real.
Yeah.
So, I felt like if through the screen I could touch him and immediately feel relatable to this guy. Kamala Harris, the vice president, knows him. They, her stint as attorneys general in the Democratic Attorneys General Association, she formed these bonds with not just him, but Beshears, Roy Cooper, all these guys who were AGs before they were governors of their states, respectively. I think he would be an inspirational choice. He's young. He's scrappy. Mm-hmm. It's sort of, you sort of get that Scranton Joe, except in a different form, but with the same kind of pedigree, with a probably big exception for some people, and that is he is Jewish American. Yeah. And I do wonder whether or not, we've seen how bad it can get when white supremacists turn anti-Semitics out loud, louder than they are anti-black. And we see what happens. So I don't know what that would feel like, but I kind of feel like there would be enough momentum, new energy, attraction of a expanded demographic of Democrats and independents voting, and they could pull that thing.
I appreciate that. I have been thinking about some other folks. I will tell you that my gut says I agree with you on Shapiro. Tiff asked us about a bold ticket, and I don't know why. I just don't think Gretchen Whitmer and Kamala Harris are a good pair. I'm not opposed to an all-women ticket, but that one just doesn't.
I wasn't feeling that either.
That doesn't feel like it. I also I'm not feeling Mark Kelly. I think that he's kind of like watching paint dry. And if I'm honest, that's what I feel like. That's where I feel Hillary Clinton messed up in her race, picking Tim Kaine. They were so worried about not having someone on the ticket with her that would overshadow her, that was more passionate and, kind of more exciting. And I think that's where they really messed up. So I want her to have someone that can go toe to toe with her. And so, y'all, I have one that's really unconventional. My idea, I don't know if this is going to pass vet in 36 hours, but my idea is for her to ask Jon Stewart.
Oh, my Lord. Let's go to a commercial break. No!
Yeah, pay all the bills.
I love Jon Stewart. I love Jon Stewart.
I think it would be
Talk me through picking a comedian.
I want to argue my case after the break.
Okay, Angela, talk us through picking a comedian.
Okay, it's not that deep. But I think, I know, like, let me say this first. I'm very frustrated about the fact that we regularly have to center what makes white men comfortable when we select tickets. I think that's, I can't wait, Tiff, like, to the point of your book that you regularly reference, as you should. I can't wait till we understand and we see the browning of America and appreciate how much investment it is going to take to really secure the rising majority and their votes, our votes. However, we're not quite there yet. And so my thought was,
I don't believe we ever will be, but yeah.
Oh, Andrew, come on. There's the demographics are shifting.
No. Demographics are different.
Whether they
political destiny want
to force everybody to have babies or not, demographics are shifting. And so my thinking is this. I think that the idea of the prosecutor versus the criminal, I don't even want to call him a convicted felon because sometimes people are wrongfully convicted, but versus the criminal is a very strong ticket. Yeah. I also think there are some things that this country is not ready to hear out of Kamala Harris's mouth. I think she needs a number two who can just say whatever they want to say without penalty. That can't be Josh Shapiro. That can't be Mark Kelly. That can't be Roy Cooper, right? That can't be any of these people. It definitely can't be Gretchen Whitmer because now you got two women. So there's somebody who's behind her throwing blows. And I think that because we are in this reality show that we can't seem to escape, the credits just won't damn roll, that we might as well meet these folks where they are. And Jon Stewart has been a regular staple, a truth teller for many. He's been on the Hill lobbying for efforts that I think many of Americans support, even when they don't agree and align on both sides of the aisle. They found ways to agree with him on some critical policy issues, especially around veterans. I think that might be a good guy. And listen, if he can't be on the ticket, they at least need to send his ass out here, right?
I was about to say, what you describe is a surrogate.
No,
well,
but I was about
to say that,
Andrew. It's not just a surrogate. It's somebody who can go toe to toe in debate with J.D. Vance and call him on his stuff.
That would be what's the woman from Alaska, Sarah Palin. Not to equate their intelligence, because he's a brilliant man, but can he be president of the United States?
Exactly.
Immediately.
He also could win and then step down and give it to Josh Shapiro.
Yeah,
well,
but
okay.
I think it would disqualify him by a lot of people. The ticket would be disqualified.
And I think trafficking in what they do is always a fail, to be honest. You know, like we hear people sometimes in all kind of dynamics, we do this, right? It's like almost Stockholm syndrome, where it's like, oh, well, men act like this, and so women think the pathway to success is acting like men. Or white folks do it like this, so black folks think, white folks water cooler, so let's act like that. I think we have to stay true to our own principles. And trafficking and putting like this TV star and making him into a politician, I think is dangerous. To Andrew's point, that is not necessarily somebody I want engaging with foreign powers on a global stage. I don't know what his understanding of foreign policy is. I don't know if he's ready to navigate budgets and, how we allocate federal funding for what's happening in the rise of the global South and, NATO and all the various things. So I would not choose Jon Stewart. I think he would make an amazing surrogate. And I think, we have to remember she would be commander in chief. The person who she picks as VP, to me, is not as important. I think it's, comes down to what people consider is who is going to be the best person to help get out votes and help her win. And I don't know that matters as much in this particular election. I could be wrong, and I'm open to y'all disagreeing with me. I don't know if we have any viewer questions that speak to that, but I'd be up for disagreement here. If I'm sometimes, I was telling Angela this. I don't even remember what we were disagreeing about, Angela, but I was telling Angela I disagree with her on something, and I was like, but look, had somebody come to me 20 years ago and said, oh, I had this idea where it's going to be an app, right? And you can just ask people for rides, like you just click a button. And I'm like, you going to give strangers your address and get in the car with a stranger? That don't make no sense. That's dumb. Yeah, or I have an idea where it's going to be a platform and you can like share your thoughts, like 120, 140 characters at a time. It's like, well, that's dumb. Like, why can't I just email you or text you? So I may not always be the visionary here. But I don't think Jon Stewart is it for me.
Well, I want to know who gives y'all that kind of excitement. I got excited about Jon Stewart. Nobody?
She gives me
what
the excitement.
What about Elizabeth Warren?
I really like Elizabeth, but I think with VP choices, what people are really measuring is, do they meet the fitness test? Like the reason why they went with a cane, if you were Hillary, is she needed a safe, warm blanket of a white man, and all he needed to be was taller. But he was from Virginia, so it worked. But
it did not work.
And people don't come up with these visions of, I've got to capitulate to be like what folks would consider acceptable. They get there because we know what the winning and the loss history is. If every time you see example before you, you want to be the mayor, but every mayor you've seen is white and a lawyer and dresses well and da-da-da-da-da, you're going to comport yourself in that way. You can't achieve the white man thing, but you can dress yourself up because it looks like the recipe for what's required to get where you're trying to go. So I don't think it is a overwhelming sort of, let me bow down to white folks and white men in order to achieve my future. I think it is what has won, who's been winning, and how do I win? Yeah. And you pull pages from the folks who have been at the helm.
I think it's changing quick. And here's the other thing that's changing quick. Now she's got to have a new campaign slogan. Nick, do we have any video of her saying we're not going back?
Donald Trump intends to cut Social Security and Medicare. He intends to give tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations and make working families foot the bill. They intend to end the Affordable Care Act and take us back then to a time when insurance companies had the power to deny people with pre-existing conditions. America has tried these failed economic policies before, but we are not going back.
They're not going back, I think, is going to stir visions of race and the sort of, the historic nature of the race, a black woman and a woman, period. And I think we have to be acutely aware of how a lot of people within our own party, mostly white in the white liberal group is how I would describe them, are all very touchy-feely about race and things that cause them to feel like the outside and the other. And I know that we're not trying to reduce ourselves and lower ourselves to fit where people are, but I just want us to be aware of those biases that sit in the back of our head that we're not going to give voice to because we know what that means. Hello, canceled. But those voices are driving our decision making. You go in the booth and you're making a decision that hasn't even pricked your forebrain. Well, your biases are deciding for you. And I just think we want her to be evaluated on the quality and the strength of the job she's done, what she's exhibited, and what she will do, her vision. And I think for a whole lot of us, we're going to be there for a lot of other reasons to add to it. But that ain't going to be what gets everybody in the yes column. In fact, it could drive a lot of people to the no.
We're not going back. You think is that negative?
I don't think it's negative. I think it elicits imagery of not what I think we want people thinking about necessarily. She will lose the value of it. I would much prefer her go with a forward-thinking objective that isn't sat next to the negative, which is make America great again. Well, okay. I mean, that's what I thought about when I say we're not going to go back.
That's exactly
I want you
it.
to tell me. I want you to lay something out for me that casts me forward.
I get
because
that.
Elections
I didn't know
are
where you
about
were
the
going,
future.
but now that you say that, I think being forward thinking and a slogan that is forward moving, I get your point. I think that's legit.
Can I just tell y'all the one thing that I like about it a lot is it feels like it's an answer to make America great again. We're not going back. Like,
well, where are we going?
But yes, and that could be that. But we're not going back is a response to make America great again. Then she can step into.
But she won't get that chance because what people have evaluated is her whole storyline. Her slogan is in contrast to what their guy has to say.
Yes, and that is what the role of a prosecutor versus the criminal in chief has to be. She has
let the judge, the jury, and the courthouses that are coming up for him take that, because I want somebody who's going to lead the country.
I understand.
And rescue us from the damn ditch we're brinking on. And I'm sorry, Angela, go ahead.
No, it's fine. You feel very passionate, as do I. So I would just say we're not going back is a response to Make America Great Again that we all had a visceral reaction to. Make America Great Again is not a forward-thinking ideology either.
It is if you're them.
It is actually a response or really just a hearkening back to Ronald Reagan, who also said, make America great again. We're not going back is a battle cry because we keep saying, and at some point we've got to acknowledge it is in fact a political war. Why is it a political war? Because we are seeing our rights being dialed back. Kamala Harris has been on the front lines of reproductive justice, trying to protect Roe, trying to ensure that we actually enshrine it and protect it in a very real way. That means we cannot go backwards. So in order for us to move forwards, I think that we have to acknowledge the many ways in which we already have gone backwards, the many ways in which we have slid even further from what this country was built upon when you give a president immunity for criminal acts. So I think you do have to give some credence, some acknowledgement for what is. Project 2025 also is not forward looking. It is also hearkening back. So it's sad that she has to be in the position to respond to the past, but she's literally running against the ghosts of the past.
But their voters know what it means to make America great again. They see themselves in that white picket fence, that house. The wife stays at home barefoot, bearing babies.
And us in the back of the bus.
No,
Yeah.
I'm just saying
I know
we
what
have
you're
different. We have
hearkening.
different interpretations of it. There's a set of
Completely.
voters who see that and they're like, "Yes, I remember but they were when you ask them, well, how old were you when America was great? They were kids. They have no idea what was going on, but they
They've never
envision
seen it.
something. They say,
But they
yes,
have
he
an
will bring this
image.
back to me. Angela's point is Project 2025 is backward looking. It is to us. To them, it's saying, here's a future I can promise you that looks better than the one that you're in than your present day. So it's forward looking to them, but backward looking to
Absolutely.
us. I think you both make good
Absolutely.
points. I'm only asking this because we have so many viewer questions. Do y'all mind if we just get to one of them
We
before
gotta
we
get
Let's
to
go.
some of
take a
them.
break?
We have so many. Tiff, you're so right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Please.
So
Let's
and
run
before
some of them.
Yes. Well, I'm just going to go in order of the script. So we have one, but before we run this video, I just want to remind our viewers, please, please, please get on camera when you submit questions. Unfortunately, we do not respond to DM questions or questions in the comments. And the reason is we want to see your pretty faces, your beautiful faces. We want to make sure
Yes.
you're real people. Y'all all know people get on social media and pretend they're somebody else. And so we want to make sure we're not engaging with bots or posers or pretenders. And so that's why we ask you to appear on camera. And we like to see you. So this first one looks like it is from Mr. Will. So Mr. Will, what you got for us?
What's up, Will?
Hey, this is Mr. Will, representing St. Louis, Missouri. And my question is, what is a super PAC? How can the black community get one? And if you do a search engine search for the Black Panther Party, it shows they are a political party. How can we use that to start putting our own candidates in place?
I love that question. I can't. Do y'all mind if I jump
You
in? I
got
just
it.
want to
You
say
got it.
yes. I can't answer the entire question, but I do want to at least respond to his question. Thank you for asking what is a super PAC, because there are so many people we take for granted what people know. We've all worked in politics, and some people don't know what a PAC is, a super PAC, or the difference. So why I love this question is because it is a timely one, because we've talked about the role of the Supreme Court. A super PAC. If you guys remember the slogan or remember hearing corporations are people, that is what birthed Super PAC. It was a Supreme Court decision, Citizens United. This court decision came out in, I want to say 2010. No, I think it was before 2010. But somebody fact check me on when it came out. But why this is significant is because it made corporations, labor organizations, it gave them the power to contribute any amount of money they wanted to. Where previously individuals could only contribute $2,500 to a candidate, corporations can contribute as much as they like, which gave certain entities an unseemly amount of power over how elections are held, how campaigns are run. And so that can be good and bad, right? Because you look at like the labor organizations, the labor unions, they were able to contribute enormous amounts of money to mostly Democratic candidates. And then you had the private sector who was able to just flood mostly conservative campaigns with their money. And I would argue it's had a devastating impact
Unlimited.
on our, unlimited funding on our politics and policies. And it has been dangerous. Why I remember this is because when Sarah Palin was tapped as vice president, which is why I think this decision may have been before 2010.
It was 2010.
It was? Okay, so I got 2010 right. But there were so many Supreme Court decisions that had an impact on the races. And I remember Katie Couric asked Sarah Palin, can you name a Supreme Court case that has been significant to you? And this dizzy chick could not name one Supreme Court case. Literally had no idea of any Supreme Court case that she could reference. So when we have truly dumbed down our politics. Now, the Black Panther part, that I don't know much about. How the black people can get a black super PAC, I don't know, because we're not a
It also
homogenous group of
depends on the
people,
state.
and we have so
Well,
many different opinions on things.
We have several super PACs. Collective PAC is one of those. The Congressional Black Caucus, essentially a super PAC is just an IE or an independent expenditure. And Tiff, to your point, you know you got the year right. Your memory is impeccable. It's 2010. It was the Citizens United case. As for a black party, right now, if you could just vote black and vote for Kamala Harris, we can probably arrange that. But also would encourage you to please listen to our podcast. We have a mini pod on third party candidates and when they should run.
Yeah.
I think that's very appropriate here. I'd love to take the next question.
Well, we're going to go to a break real quick. And on the other side of this break, we're going to
That's
come back
true. We
with
do
the
need a
viewer
break.
question. So stay tuned.
What is up, Native Land Pod? My name is Naheem Banks, and I am a graduate of the Howard University, HU. And my question for you all is, why do you think that the Democratic Party hasn't been investing in and supporting candidates of color? In 2018, I'm a California resident, and I followed Andrew Gillum's campaign and Stacey Abrams' campaign really religiously, because they were young, they were exciting, they were progressive, and I really thought that they were gonna fight for communities like mine. And even my freshman year at Howard, I had the opportunity to volunteer at the CDC, and I did that really because I wanted to take a picture with Andrew Gillum. Now I'm going to attach that picture here. But in the 2022 midterms and even in this past primary season, we've constantly seen Black candidates overlooked, whether that is Barbara Lee in California, which you guys talked about in the last episode. We had Mandela Barnes not get the support he needed in Wisconsin, even though his governor ended up getting elected to a second term. We had Gary Chambers in Louisiana, Marquita Bradshaw in Tennessee, Sherry Beasley in South Carolina. We had the most Black candidates for office these past two cycles down in the South, and I just feel like we completely abandoned them, partly because the Democratic Party and these consultants think that candidates of color are deciding that we can't win. So why do you all think that? What do you think we can do to change that going forward?
Man,
I love this.
You got it all.
I love this guy.
Here's the one thing I wanted to
hire him.
I got flowers coming to the studio today, and Andrew, these are for you, brother.
Oh my goodness!
Because he just, the way that he touted what you did, and I think Tiff and I do a good job of recognizing all that you've meant to and mean to us, but also to the culture. What you did to energize a group of young people who were never interested in politics before, I think is so important. I hate to fact check people, but Sherry Beasley's North Carolina, not South Carolina. But everything else he said was so good. And I think that we really do need to have a conversation about what it's like to build not just a Democratic bench, but a political bench of young people of color. Again, we know that the premise of Tiff's book is spot on. There's no way to energize a base where they don't see themselves. And I think that is case in point. Yeah. There's no excuse for the Democratic Party not to invest in these races where people have demonstrated an ability to run and win. If they can get within a margin of error, 3,000 votes, 5,000 votes, hell, 10,000 votes, we should be trying to figure out what went wrong and trying to shift it a little bit. One of the things that I'm so worried about with the vice president's campaign right now is bringing in the same old consultants, the same old ideas, trying to make her fit a mold that she should not be trying to conform to. It doesn't work for her. That trying to run Kamala Harris as a white man is not a winning strategy. It's not. It's an inauthentic approach to what we know to be the case. Like, that is not it. And I think in 2008, that worked a little bit. They could neutralize Barack Obama and kind of make him palatable for white people. I don't think that same approach can work here. And so what happens when a Gary Chambers, you guys, this audience knows Gary Chambers because Tiff likes to reference that ad. It's such a great ad. What happens when you step outside of that conformity? Is it still, even if it's not safe for you and your cookie cutter mold, is it still safe in that it is a winning approach? And I think that's something we got to wrestle with long term.
Well, I think
Andrew, before you answer,
wins.
Can I give you my flowers too? I don't have no actual flowers. Angela's holding the flowers for me.
Get out of here.
First of all, I love that he said how inspiring you were, but it's so true. Like, there are some candidates who are politically ambitious, and it comes across. They can give pretend authenticity, if you pardon the paradox. But when you meet them, it's like, it's not so much that you want to lead versus you want to rule, or you want to build a platform, or you want to be famous, or whatever those things are. Yeah. But Andrew, your campaign was different. You as an individual are different, gifted. A light shines upon you. And I think on this podcast, people get to see that. But also just individually, when you and I are together, we typically try to go to dinner or we go for a walk or whatever.
Don't tell it all on every,
I'm just saying, we have a good time. But I always take stuff to you, a problem I'm having or issues or whatever. And I think it speaks to who you've been your entire life when people know your life story. And a lot of comments, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but a lot of comments consistently are The same way people talk about Obama in this sense. When are you coming back? We need you. How could you leave us here in Florida? Like it is like a sense of like abandoned, but they feel abandoned. Like they want you to come back. Yeah. When it comes to supporting Black candidates and other candidates of color, I echo everything Angela said, and I would just want to inform the viewers and say it is the donor class as well. The donor class is largely white and male, and who they think can be a viable candidate. You saw this in Andrew's race. The media is also complicit. They summarily dismissed Andrew's campaign. Completely. It was like, he just wasn't even on their radar. You see this in the incestuous media. The fact that they all have friends who work, on different campaigns. They went to college with people. It didn't matter that I knew Andrew very well. It didn't matter. All we know Wes Moore, all the people who we know, it just didn't matter to them. It wasn't on their radar. In Politico, they used to do, their newsletter. Everybody who was spotted was like a white person, involved. And so we have to disrupt this landscape, and we have to force the party with a groundswelling in your participation. And I think that's what you did, Andrew. I want you to address what the young man said, but I would love for you to talk about like what people, like how we should be thinking about these campaigns, since you very much did that.
Well, I appreciate both my sisters here, and brother, so proud of you, and can't wait to see your name on a ballot. It's heading there, and not because you present well, but because the depth of what you had to say clearly demonstrates that you are genuinely and passionately concerned and interested in the community that grows up around you. You want to shape it, and you know what? I wish more people who say that they were interested in public service got into it steeled by the knowing that what they intend to do is to shape the future. I can't stand the folks who say the poll numbers say such and such and such and such, so I should go over in the corner and die? Because you told me I'm 5th out of 5th the week before Election Day, but I came number 1 out of 5? Come on. And so it used to be that great leaders would shape public opinion. And the polls taken after that would result in what they resulted in because they were shaped by somebody who had the courage to stand up and say what it is that they think, that they believe. And trust that on the listening end, that there might be a person who sees you and hears you clearly and can relate to what it is that you have to say. They're never going to give us equal footing. The ruler by which the rest of us are measured is the decades, years, centuries of the white men who have come before and held those positions before. So we're not going to win there. Even the way they cover us. They want to talk about my brother's criminal history, but they want to talk about the other guy's business that he started, at the age of 5 with $1 million loan from his daddy that they omitted. So to Angela's point around when do we get measured for who we are rather than how well we can capitulate to what the majority, the ruling class has to do and say. And I think it's in this space of running for office, being of public service, where you have to throw the rule book out. If you're waiting for the invitation, it'll never come. If you're waiting for the boardroom meeting where you get called in, it's not happening. Bring your folding chair or sit against the wall on the floor. They're not going to invite us into those spaces. And so what do? Hell, we create our own. And when people get to see us, not the bourgeoisie and the ruling class, but when people get to see you and they get to see your heart and they get to understand the relatability of it and that you care just like they care and that you put one leg through the pants just like he does or she does. And people are hungry for that. That's why, and I hate to say it, but you have so many Nimrods on the right who are willing to take Donald Trump as he is because he is the same low life that they are.
Oh, Lord. Oh, that's one.
I'm just saying that there is a group of people who don't want a president who's better.
Yes.
They want a president who resembles their life. And he gives that to them, even if it's a made up, trunched up story, with the exception of his latest record.
I do want to say, Andrew, I really appreciate what you're saying. I think that this is a great time to slightly pivot to something very solemn and somber. Speaking of lowlifes, Donald Trump, as you all know, has said that if it's up to him when he is president of the United States, he will grant police officers law enforcement immunity. And we just bore witness to the tragic murder of Sonya Massey in Springfield, Illinois. She was holding a pot of water. She was told to turn the stove off so that the pot didn't boil over by a sheriff's deputy. And as she put that pot down, she was shot and killed. She was shot in the face. And when you think about that story, you guys, and what is promised, there are so many others. It's so unfortunate that we can just erase Sonya's name and put in somebody else's, and erase that name and put in someone else's time and time. It is as old as history. It is as long a story as vigilantes chasing after enslaved people who escaped. There is a reason we know in our souls that qualified immunity does not belong in the hands of police officers. They should have to face account for when they've done wrong. But when they commit murder, they should have to face accountability. This story is one that's resting heavy on me, y'all. I described what happened because I can't bear. I'm just being honest with our audience. I've not watched the video. I can't. I refuse to look at it. We talked about this a little bit, but I just want to pause here and just acknowledge to my friend Quentin Morris, who is Sonya's cousin, and flagged this for me last week. And so I just want to thank him for his courage in sharing her story in the midst of their family's grief.
And she called the police.
Yes.
We should say. She called for help. I did watch the video, not intentionally. It was played on CNN one morning, and I saw it. And I just, the only thing I can say that body cams have done is given us a better view of us being murdered. That's not the issue. It really is just a workforce development issue when it comes to police officers and their training. It is a changing hearts and minds issue to be able to see us as human beings, which still, unfortunately, doesn't happen. And it's a funding issue, to have better support services for when these types of calls are made. But it is, Angela, you're right not to watch it because you can't unsee it once you watch it. But what I remember most is, I live in the inner city in downtown. And what I remember thinking is I would be afraid to call the police. Even if there was an intruder in my house, I don't know who I would fear more. I would feel completely alone and open and violated, essentially. So this is the reality that we face as Black people. Black women sometimes get left out of the conversation when it comes to police brutality, but we've sadly seen from Sandra Bland to, do we remember the woman's name who the neighbor came over? This wasn't a police shooting, but her neighbor came over and shot her. This was last summer. Angela, you were on some of those calls.
Yes, it was, oh my God.
But the whole point that you can't remember, the sad part is there are so many.
No, I'm going to get
there
her
are
name.
so many. We are all
your
hashtaggable.
Point was right, Tiffany, about, we weren't lost to the stories.
It was AJ Owens.
Before technology.
AJ Owens.
Thank you. AJ Owens. Thank you.
The technology just helped put it out there for the rest of the world. But I have to tell you, and it's so sad that it has to go this way, but oftentimes the images have to be put out there so that the other community gets to get a sense of the inhumanity that's visited upon us day in and day out. Mamie Till didn't want to have to put her baby on the front page of the newspaper. She had to endure and re-endure that trauma so that the silent folks could say and do something different. And that's often the story for us, that the imagery has to happen, and the re-wounding, comes with it, has to be suffered so that the discontent, the uninterested, now they got to watch.
Mm-hmm. The Edmund Pettus Bridge. Go ahead,
I'm sorry.
Angela. Well, I was just going to say the Edmund Pettus Bridge, when the white community saw police on horseback run down pregnant women, run down children, turn their dogs in holes. It wasn't just Black men, and that's tragic enough.
Bloody
but they
Sunday.
literally saw these people like they were not animals. And white people across the country said, oh, well, this can't be us. We have to do something about this. So sometimes there is something to put in that imagery out there. But I get Angela's point that we are re-traumatized each time this happens and having to bear witness to it. So I get it.
I did want to ask you all, given what we know happened with George Floyd and when people had to watch and couldn't look away, do you think that it's worth it to show people on our podcast the video of Sean Grayson killing Sonya Massey?
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't feel strongly about that.
Yeah. Well, especially, Angela, because you said you've been avoiding it. Like, you've gone out of your way. And
I'm going to go out the room. I'm going to go out the room.
Well, but we shouldn't, if you feel that strongly about it. I don't think it's worth it. If you feel that way, that means 10,000 other people feel that way.
That's right.
You know?
You're not alone.
And I feel torn because I heard what Andrew said about Mamie Till. You know, I know that there is something that is important about witnessing our death. I can't wait until that same passion is just for our ability to live, but it's not here right now. It's like it has to, our trauma, our death has to be witnessed for our humanity to be validated.
That's it.
And
it's
so that's why I'm saying
humanity.
if I have to step out so that we might preserve the life of one more, I'll do that.
No, I think if people want to see it, they know how to see it. You know, information's at your fingertips. I don't think we need to take our time. I think if it offends or upsets one, it offends or upsets all. And as co-hosts, we should just say, okay, we've described what happened. People can go see it. They know. You know, we've seen this time and time again. And Angela, I didn't think about this deeply. I probably need to give it some more thought. But there was some trauma that I definitely carried with me after 2020, like after COVID, after the unrest in all the communities, because George Floyd was not the only person. Like, we saw time and again police brutality. Yeah, exactly. It was
and just 2 days before him, the New York Times Central Park, where the neighbor goes carrying on the man. And
the bird watcher,
the bird watcher.
So it didn't even always result in
my home.
death.
I'm in Washington State. You know, my hometown. Sorry, really quick. Outside of my hometown is an area called Tacoma. Manny Ellis was also shot and killed, or killed in the same way as George Floyd. Right. So like we cannot escape it geographically. We can't escape it after we reach a certain age. We can't escape it by gender. You know, we can't escape it because you live in a progressive area. You know, you cannot escape the whatever racism and supremacy is ingrained in training or the lack thereof because they want to spend more money on training and equipment. We cannot escape it. And so there needs to be some place where we are fully liberated and allowed to thrive. We need to have some type of law enforcement that truly is here to protect and serve all, not just
community
some.
Policing. Yeah. And just for historical context, the police industry itself is rooted in white supremacy.
Yeah,
of course.
They swole their ranks because I've talked about this on the podcast before. In the early part of last century, there was so much violent vigilantism that resulted in our death. It wasn't that they were like, oh, we got to slow down these deaths. It was, this killing needs to be more organized. And so the local commissions that were formed essentially said you can shoot a black person, beat a black person, murder a black person, but you got to be wearing a badge while you do it. And that is how police units were formed. They were never meant to protect us. They were protecting their community from us. And it's hard for us to unlearn that. So that's why there's so much distrust in
And
it.
the further truth, of course, is the prison industrial complex, which is like, try to kill a few of them so we can actually get them in prison and pull down that government money for 40 years. It is horrible that our community's trauma is sort of the deposit that we make into the well of being viewed for that moment as human.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Do we have time? I don't want to shift us too quickly. I know we're coming up on time and we're going a little over, but do we have time for one more listener? Just because we got so many, do we have time for one more listener question? All right, we got one more viewer question. Nick, roll that tape.
Greetings, Native Land Pod. I have a question. My name is Kimberly Archie. I'm originally from Seattle, Washington. I now reside in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. Hey, Angela, my question is this. With Kamala Harris being endorsed as the candidate for the Democrats, how can she navigate and push forward a platform that may differ from Biden's platform when she's still vice president? I don't understand how she's going to be able to be strategic but also navigate those waters at the same time. How does that happen? You guys have some ideas?
Love it.
That's Miss Archie. So y'all, there's so
How
much.
do you know her?
Visit, Miss Archie.
There's so much history. NAACP, AXO, skiing, all the things. Shout out to the 206. Speaking of which, let me do this before I forget. I'm at Converge Media in the Black Media Matter studio, and I'm just so grateful for them for my flowers today and for hosting us. That's great.
Oh, that's
now, Miss Archie, here's what I would say. In order for Kamala to even be able to differentiate and divert a little bit from this agenda, and she has to do that to campaign. I don't think that she has to poo-poo what's been accomplished with Joe Biden. I also think that she has to be clear about not owning the fullness and the totality of his record. There are things in that record that people are not super excited about. We've talked about them on the podcast, but she should absolutely tout his accomplishments and hers, specifically where she was front and center on reproductive justice, on maternal health, on some of the things that she believes are accomplishments around the border. I also think that there are places where she legitimately has policy differences from Joe Biden. She can make those points clear in a debate and on her platform on the website, which is still currently being formulated. So those are my short answers.
I love that. And I think she's going to have to, Angela. I think she's going to have to distinguish herself and lead with courage and conviction on where she, where there may have been some daylight between her and President Biden. Look, I think, I've been hearing a lot of the chattering class say, well, nobody's ever voted for her before. And they cannot be more wrong. Michael Harriot with the Griot wrote a great piece talking about how many elections she's won. People have voted for her multiple times. So she's very equipped with and familiar with being the principal on a campaign. And I hope that my wish for her is that she would come out and not follow polls, not listen to the consultants, as you all talked about, but listen to some of, the people who are lay people, who may not traffic in politics, but the people who will be inspired to vote for her. So I really hope that she does that. I think we got to do calls to action. Right?
It is definitely time for calls to action. Mine is to challenge the folks who have been trafficking in myths and misinformation about Kamala Harris's record as prosecutor, about her record as senator, about her record as vice president, that you actually check yourself before you wreck yourself, boo-boo. And that goes for folks on all sides of the spectrum, folks who are in our community and out. Folks who we may know, just be really careful about what you put out there before fact checking. It's not hard. You got Google. You can check your source. Tiffany on another podcast tell you how to cite your source. Make sure your sources are accurate, right? But let's be very clear about the fact that this is arm's length away. Don't just say things because they're hyperbolic. Make sure you have the facts about who this person is. The election is 103 days away. Tiffany and Andrew.
I love it. I'll go quickly because mine is a shout out and a CTA, and it is to my beloved dear brother who is such a fan of both of you all. My brother's name is Daytwan, and he is we all disagree on this podcast, and my brother is never afraid to tell me yo, I was feeling what Angela was saying, or but Andrew, that's my dude, he was saying. So he feels like he knows y'all, he definitely feels like welcome home.
Talk to
and
him.
Yeah, Andrew, you talk to him on the phone, but he's a fan. On the road, he listens to this podcast. The second it drops, my brother's my number one fan. He's always out there listening. So that is my shout out to him.
D.
But my call to action is please be safe drivers on the road, because I worry about my brother every day driving the big rig. And so y'all be careful. Don't be cutting these trucks off, and give yourself room. And if you can't see the driver can't see you. So that is my call to action today, and just telling my brother I love him dearly and thank him for all his support.
I love that.
We love you, Tips, brother.
I love that. Be safe. Be safe, D. Real quick, following up on Angela's thing about fact checking. Just if you're gonna go to your social media platforms and post about Kamala Harris, will you just do me the favor of maybe posting a positive, something that is inspiring you about the campaign before you start digging directly into the thing you don't like? We're not electing Jesus. He's already been determined, decided. You're electing a president who is human and fallible, and there isn't a person on earth I must believe that you would agree with 100% of the time. So instead of that instinct that we all have to post and let our differences be known with the whomever person in power, maybe check that for a minute. Put it on the back burner. That's not to say don't have critiques, but maybe make your first or second or whatever post about this race be what might be inspiring you around considering supporting, voting for her. And then lastly, a ride with 5. It's time to work, y'all. Angela's already given us a number of days. We're almost, fewer than 100 days to the election, and our communities are not going to organize themselves. And to the extent that they are, they need bodies to make it effective. So arrive at the polls, bring 5 people with you.
I love it. Well, thank you all so much. By the time we're back, maybe it'll be Harris Shapiro. Maybe it'll be Harris Kelly. Maybe it'll be Harris Cooper. I don't think it's going to be Harris Bashir. Let's see if I'm a betting woman. Let's see. I bet y'all $5 it ain't that. But
all right.
You don't know? They ain't got but 5 people in Kentucky, but we're going to see. Anyway, as we said, there are 103 days left until the election. We're going to keep saying it on this podcast. This is Native Land Pod. Welcome home, y'all.
Welcome home, y'all.
Thank you for joining the natives. Intentional with the info on all of the latest. Rod Gillum and Cross connected to the statements that you leave on our socials. Thank you sincerely for the patience. Reason for your choice is clear. We're so grateful. Took the oath to execute roles. Yeah, faithful. Preserve, defend, and protect the truth, even if painful. Welcome home to all of the natives. We thank you.
Welcome home, y'all.
What's
Welcome
up,
home.
sis?
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.